Welcome to Shadows of the Past, where the darkest corners of human history are laid bare. Tonight, we bring you Volume 18 of our true crime series, 9 chilling stories of betrayal, obsession, and unthinkable acts that linger like ghosts in the night. These are not tales of fiction, but real events that unravel the fragile threads of trust and love. Settle in, close your eyes, and let the rain wash over you as we step into the shadow. Our first story takes us to a quiet town in Idaho, where a seemingly perfect family was shattered by a crime that no one saw coming. Part 1. The Johnson Family Murders, 2003, Bellevue, Idaho. In the early hours of September 2, 2003, the small town of Bellevue, Idaho, was jolted awake by a sound that didn't belong. A sharp crack of gunfire echoing through the stillness. Bellevue was the kind of place where neighbors left their doors unlocked, where the biggest scandals were whispered over coffee at the local diner. But that morning, something unthinkable had happened. Inside a modest home on Elm Street, 2 lives had been snuffed out in a matter of moments, and a family would never be the same. Diane Johnson, 52, and her husband Alan, 46, were the kind of couple everyone envied. Diane was a paralegal, sharp-witted and warm, always ready with a smile. Alan ran a landscaping business, his hands calloused from years of shaping the earth into beauty. Together, they'd built a life that seemed unbreakable. A cozy home, a thriving business, and a teenage daughter, Sarah, who was the center of their world. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Cracks that no one noticed until it was too late. That morning, a neighbor, Brent Hill, was sipping his coffee when he heard a piercing scream. It was Sarah, 16 years old, barefoot and frantic, running across the lawn. "They're dead," she cried, her voice breaking. "My parents, they're dead." Brent didn't hesitate. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911, his heart pounding as he followed Sarah back to the house. What he saw inside would haunt him for the rest of his life. Diane lay in her bed, a single bullet wound in her head, the sheets soaked with blood. Alan was in the bathroom, slumped against the tiles, his chest torn open by a high-powered rifle shot. The scene was chaos. Blood spattered the walls, shell casings glinted on the floor, and the air was thick with the metallic scent of death. But something was off. There were no signs of a break-in, no shattered windows, no forced lock. The killer, it seemed, had walked right in. Police arrived within minutes, their boots heavy on the hardwood floors. At first, they considered the possibility of a murder-suicide. It wasn't uncommon in cases like this, a husband driven to despair taking his wife's life before his own. But the evidence told a different story. The murder weapon, a Winchester .264 rifle, was missing. And then there were the strange items scattered around the house, a bloody kitchen knife, a pink bathrobe stuffed in a trash can, rubber gloves and a pair of leather gloves, all smeared with traces of blood and bone. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. This was calculated. Sarah, still trembling, told police her story. She'd been asleep in her room when she heard the shots. Terrified, she ran to her parents' bedroom, saw her mother's lifeless body, and fled to the neighbors for help. Her tears were real, her grief palpable. But as detectives listened, they noticed inconsistencies. Sarah claimed she hadn't touched anything, yet there was blood on her nightgown. She said she'd been in her room all night, but a fragment of bone was found on her bedroom floor. And then there was the pink bathrobe. In the trash, Sarah's bathrobe, stained with her mother's blood. Investigators turned their attention to the family's life, searching for a motive. Diane and Alan were well-liked, with no enemies to speak of. But there was tension in the household, centered around Sarah. At 16, she was rebellious, clashing with her parents over her new boyfriend, Bruno Santos. Bruno was 19, with a rough edge that Diane and Alan didn't trust. They'd forbidden Sarah from seeing him, threatening to send her to boarding school if she didn't comply. To a teenager, that kind of control could feel suffocating. Could it have driven her to something unimaginable? Police also looked at another figure in the Johnsons' orbit, Mel Spiegel, a tenant who rented the guest house on their property. Mel was a loner with a history of odd behavior, and he'd been seen near the main house the night of the murders. But Mel had an airtight alibi, video footage from a local bar where he'd been drinking until 2 a.m. With Mel cleared, the focus shifted back to Sarah. And the more they dug, the more troubling the picture became. Forensic experts analyzed the evidence with meticulous care. The rubber gloves found in the trash had Sarah's DNA inside them. The leather gloves discarded nearby bore traces of gunpowder residue. And then there was the rifle. A neighbor reported seeing Sarah handling a similar weapon weeks before, claiming she was practicing for a hunting trip. But the Johnson family didn't hunt. When police searched Bruno's apartment, they found a box of .264 ammunition empty, with no rifle to match. Bruno swore he knew nothing about the murders, and without physical evidence tying him to the scene, he was released. But Sarah wasn't so lucky. In October 2003, 6 weeks after the murders, Sarah Johnson was arrested and charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. The town was stunned. How could a 16-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her commit such a heinous act? At her trial in 2005, prosecutors painted a chilling portrait of a teenager consumed by rage. They argued that Sarah, desperate to escape her parents' rules and live freely with Bruno, had planned the killings with cold precision. The pink bathrobe, they said, was worn to shield her from blood spatter. The gloves were used to avoid fingerprints. And the rifle, likely stashed somewhere only Sarah knew, was the tool of her betrayal. Sarah's defense team fought back, insisting she was innocent. They pointed to the lack of a murder weapon and questioned the reliability of the DNA evidence. They even suggested Bruno or an unknown intruder could be to blame, but the jury wasn't convinced. The blood, the bone, the gloves, it all pointed to Sarah. After a 3-week trial, she was found guilty on both counts. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole, a punishment that felt both just and heartbreaking. Sarah, still a teenager, would spend the rest of her days behind bars. But the story doesn't end there. Even now, decades later, questions linger. Where's the murder weapon? Why was Sarah's DNA so prominently featured, yet no definitive proof tied her to the rifle? Some believe she didn't act alone, that Bruno or someone else helped cover her tracks. Others wonder if the truth is even darker. Perhaps a family secret buried deep drove Sarah to the edge. In Bellevue, the house on Elm Street still stands, a silent monument to a tragedy that tore a community apart. The rain falls softly there as it does tonight, washing away the echoes of that fateful morning. But for those who remember Diane and Alan Johnson, the pain remains, as raw as ever. As we leave Bellevue behind, our journey into the shadows continues. Join us for part 2, where we unravel the chilling tale of Kristen Rossum, a woman whose beauty hid a deadly secret. Until then, let the rain guide you into the night. Part 2, The Poisoned Heart of Kristen Rossum, 2000, San Diego, California. In the golden glow of San Diego, California, where the sun kisses the Pacific and life feels like a dream, a darkness was brewing in the autumn of 2000. It was a darkness that hid behind a flawless facade, behind a woman whose beauty and brilliance captivated everyone she met. Kristen Rossum was young, ambitious, a rising star in the world of forensic toxicology, but beneath her polished exterior lay a web of lies, addiction, and betrayal, a web that would ensnare her husband Gregory DeVillers and lead to a crime so calculated it would shock a city. This is the story of a love poisoned by secrets, where the line between truth and deception blurred until it vanished entirely. Kristen Rossum was only 24 years old, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. With her striking blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, and a smile that could disarm anyone, she seemed destined for greatness. She worked as a toxicologist at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office, a prestigious role where she analyzed evidence from crime scenes, her keen mind unraveling the mysteries of death. Colleagues admired her intellect, friends envied her charm, and at the center of her world was Gregory, her husband of just over a year, a man who loved her with a devotion that bordered on worship. Gregory DeVillers, 26, was the son of a prominent California family, a quiet, dependable man with a gentle soul. He worked as a biotech researcher, his days spent in labs chasing breakthroughs that could save lives. To those who knew them, Kristen and Gregory were the perfect couple. Young, attractive, and poised for a bright future, they lived in a tidy apartment in the upscale neighborhood of University City, their home filled with photos of their wedding, a day when their love seemed unbreakable. But appearances, as they so often do, lied. By November 2000, the cracks in their marriage were impossible to ignore, at least for those who looked closely. Kristen was hiding a secret, one that had begun to consume her. She was addicted to methamphetamine, a drug that had taken hold of her during her college years and never let go. It started as a way to cope with the pressures of her demanding career. but soon it was a crutch she couldn't live without. Gregory, unaware of the depth of her struggles, sensed something was wrong. His wife was pulling away, her warmth replaced by a restless edge. He begged her to open up, to let him help, but Kristen kept her demons locked away. And then there was Michael Robertson, Kristen's boss at the medical examiner's office. Michael was older, charismatic, and married, but that didn't stop the sparks from flying. What began as professional admiration quickly turned into something more dangerous. Late nights at the lab became stolen moments, whispered promises, and a full-blown affair. Kristen was captivated by Michael's intensity, his power, his ability to make her feel alive in a way Gregory never could. She poured her heart into emails and diary entries, confessing her love for Michael and her growing resentment toward her husband. Gregory, she wrote, was holding her back, suffocating her with his predictable, ordinary love. On November 6, 2000, the fragile balance of Kristen's double life collapsed. That morning, Gregory didn't show up for work. His colleagues, concerned, called the apartment but got no answer. By evening, Kristen dialed 911, her voice trembling with panic. "My husband, he's not breathing," she sobbed. "I think he's dead." Paramedics rushed to the University City apartment where they found a scene that was both heartbreaking and strange. Gregory lay on the bed, lifeless, his body surrounded by red rose petals. A torn wedding photo rested on the nightstand, and an empty syringe lay nearby. To the responders, it looked like a suicide, a tragic end to a young man's life. But something didn't sit right. Gregory's family, devastated by the news, refused to believe he'd taken his own life. He was stable, optimistic, with no history of depression or drug use. His brother, Jerome, demanded answers. Greg loved Kristen more than anything, he told police. He would never do this. The medical examiner's office, Kristen's own workplace, was tasked with determining the cause of death, and what they found would turn this tragedy into a nightmare. The autopsy revealed no signs of a typical drug overdose. Instead, Gregory's blood contained staggering levels of fentanyl, a synthetic opioid 100 times more potent than morphine. The concentration was astronomical, 15 times higher than a lethal dose. Alongside it were traces of clonazepam and oxycodone, a cocktail of drugs that would have stopped his heart in minutes. Fentanyl in particular raised red flags. It wasn't a drug Gregory had access to, but Kristen did. As a toxicologist, she handled fentanyl patches and samples daily, logging them in and out of the lab's secure storage. Could this be a coincidence? Investigators began to piece together the days leading up to Gregory's death. Kristen told police she'd come home from work on November 5th to find Gregory feeling unwell. She claimed he'd taken some pills, maybe oxycodone, maybe something else, and gone to bed. The next morning, she said he was unresponsive. Her story was simple, almost too simple. And it didn't explain the rose petals, the syringe, or the fentanyl. Detectives dug deeper, and what they uncovered was a portrait of a woman unraveling. At the medical examiner's office, an audit revealed discrepancies in the fentanyl inventory. Several patches were missing, unaccounted for in the weeks before Gregory's death. Kristen, as one of the few with access, was questioned. She insisted she'd followed protocol, that the missing drugs were likely a clerical error. But her colleagues noticed something else. Kristen had been acting strangely, distracted, and overly emotional. One co-worker recalled her talking about Gregory's drug problem, a claim that stunned those who knew him. Gregory had never touched drugs, not even recreationally. Why was Kristen planting this narrative? The investigation turned to Kristen's personal life, and the affair with Michael Robertson came into focus. Emails between the two, recovered from Kristen's work computer, were damning. "I can't stop thinking about you," she wrote. "Gregory is a weight around my neck." Michael's responses were equally incriminating, urging Kristen to find a way out of her marriage. Detectives also found Kristen's diary, its pages filled with confessions of her love for Michael and her desperation to be free. One entry, written just days before Gregory's death, was chilling. "I wish he would just disappear." Physical evidence began to mount. In the apartment, police found a used fentanyl patch hidden in a drawer, its serial number matching those from the lab. The syringe contained traces of fentanyl, and the rose petals, arranged so carefully around Gregory's body, were fresh, purchased that day from a nearby florist. Kristen's fingerprints were on the torn wedding photo, and her DNA was on the syringe. It was as if she'd staged the scene to look like a suicide, but the details betrayed her. Why would a suicidal man scatter rose petals? Why would he use a drug he had no access to? As detectives closed in, Kristen's story began to crumble. She admitted to the affair, but insisted Michael had nothing to do with Gregory's death. She claimed Gregory had been experimenting with drugs, a lie that fell apart under scrutiny. The missing fentanyl, the syringe, the emails, it all pointed to Kristen. In June 2001, she was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. The case sent shockwaves through San Diego, a city unaccustomed to such cold-blooded deceit. Kristen, the golden girl of the medical examiner's office, was now a suspect in her husband's poisoning. The trial, which began in October 2002, was a media frenzy. Prosecutors argued that Kristen had meticulously planned Gregory's murder, using her expertise as a toxicologist to make it look like an overdose. They painted her as a femme fatale, a woman who'd traded love for obsession, who'd poisoned her husband to be with her lover. The fentanyl, they said, was her weapon of choice. Silent, deadly, and nearly untraceable. The rose petals and torn photo were her attempt to craft a narrative of a broken man, driven to despair by a failing marriage. But Gregory, they argued, was no such man. He was a victim, betrayed by the person he trusted most. Kristen's defense team countered with a different story. They claimed Gregory had indeed taken his own life, overwhelmed by the pressures of his job and his wife's infidelity. They suggested he'd accessed the fentanyl himself, perhaps through Kristen's work, and that the rose petals were a final, poetic gesture. They even pointed the finger at Michael Robertson, implying he might have influenced Kristen or supplied the drug. But Michael, who testified under immunity, denied any involvement. He admitted to the affair, but swore he'd never encouraged Kristen to harm her husband. The evidence, however, was overwhelming. Forensic experts testified that the fentanyl levels in Gregory's blood were inconsistent with an accidental overdose. The missing patches from the lab, the syringe, the staged scene, it all pointed to premeditation. Kristen's own words in her emails and diary revealed a woman desperate to escape her marriage, no matter the cost. The jury deliberated for just 2 days before delivering their verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. On November 12, 2002, Kristen Rossum was sentenced to life in prison without parole. She was 26 years old, her future reduced to a cell block, and a legacy of betrayal. But the story of Kristen Rossum doesn't end with the gavel's fall. Questions linger, like shadows that refuse to fade. Was Michael Robertson truly innocent, or did he play a larger role than he admitted? His marriage survived the scandal, and he quietly moved to Australia, far from the prying eyes of San Diego. Some believe he manipulated Kristen, using her addiction and vulnerability to his advantage. Others wonder about the fentanyl itself. How did Kristen smuggle it from the lab without being caught, and why, even now, does she maintain her innocence, filing appeals from her prison cell claiming she was framed? For Gregory's family, there are no answers, only grief. They lost a son, a brother, a man whose only crime was loving too deeply. The rose petals, once a symbol of romance, became a cruel mockery of his death, a final insult from the woman he'd vowed to cherish. In San Diego, the medical examiner's office tightened its protocols, haunted by the breach that allowed a killer to walk its halls. And Kristen, once a beacon of promise, remains a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the brightest facades can hide the darkest hearts. As the rain falls softly outside, washing away the echoes of that November night, we leave Kristen Rossum behind, her story a whisper in the wind. But our journey through the shadows is far from over. Join us for part 3, where we travel to the streets of Liverpool, England, where a young woman's life was stolen in a hail of bullets and a community's heart was broken. Until then, let the rain carry you into the night. Part 3, The Christmas Eve Tragedy of L. Edwards, 2022, Liverpool, England. In the heart of Liverpool, England, where the Mersey River hums with history and the streets pulse with life, Christmas Eve 2022 should have been a night of joy. Families gathered, lights twinkled, and the air was thick with the promise of celebration. But at the Lighthouse Pub in Wallasey Village, a quaint corner of this vibrant city, the festive spirit was shattered by gunfire. A young woman, vibrant and beloved, lay lifeless on the pavement, her laughter silenced by a hail of bullets meant for someone else. This is the story of L. Edwards, a 26-year-old caught in the crossfire of a gang war and the chilling ripple effect of a crime that shook a community to its core. Elle Edwards was the kind of person who lit up every room she entered. With her warm smile, infectious laugh, and boundless energy, she was a beacon of light in Wallasey, a tight-knit suburb across the river from Liverpool's bustling center. At 26, Elle was carving out a life full of promise. She worked as a beautician, her skilled hands bringing confidence to her clients, and dreamed of opening her own salon one day. She was a daughter, a sister, a friend, someone who made everyone feel seen, valued, loved. Christmas was her favorite time of year, a season she filled with traditions, decorating the tree with her family, baking mince pies, and dancing the night away with friends. On December 24th, 2022, Elle was doing what she loved most, celebrating with those closest to her. The Lighthouse Pub, a cozy spot known for its live music and warm atmosphere, was packed with holiday revelers. Elle arrived with her sister and a group of friends, her laughter mingling with the clink of glasses and the strum of a guitar. She wore a festive outfit, her hair styled perfectly, her spirit as bright as the fairy light strung across the bar. No one could have known that outside, in the shadows, a predator was circling, his mind set on violence. Wallasey, like many urban fringes, had its share of troubles. Beneath its charming facade, a turf war was simmering between two rival gangs, the Woodchurch crew and the Beechwood Estate gang. These weren't the glamorous crime syndicates of Hollywood films, but loose networks of young men fueled by drugs, pride, and a toxic need for control. Cocaine was their currency, the streets their battlefield. And on Christmas Eve, that battle was about to spill into the lives of the innocent. Connor Chapman, 22, was no stranger to this world. A low-level member of the Beechwood gang, he was a product of the streets. Angry, reckless, and desperate to prove himself. With a rap sheet that included theft, assault, and drug offenses, Chapman was already known to police. But on this night, he wasn't just a petty criminal. He was a hunter, armed with a Scorpion submachine gun, a weapon designed for war, not the quiet streets of Wallasey. His targets were two men from the rival Woodchurch crew, Jake Duffy and Kieran Selden. They'd been spotted at the Lighthouse Pub, and Chapman saw his chance to settle a score. As midnight approached, Elle and her friend stepped outside the pub for a cigarette, the cold air sharp against their flushed cheeks. The parking lot was dimly lit, the chatter of the crowd blending with the distant hum of traffic. No one noticed the figure lurking nearby, his face obscured by a hood, his hands gripping the cold metal of the Scorpion. At 11:50 p.m., the night exploded. Chapman opened fire, unleashing a barrage of 12 bullets in a matter of seconds. Screams pierced the air as people dove for cover. Glass shattered and chaos erupted. When the gunfire stopped, Elle Edwards lay on the ground, her body riddled with bullets. She was gone before anyone could reach her. The scene was pandemonium. Pub-goers scrambled for safety, some crawling under tables, others running into the night. Elle's friends, frozen in horror, knelt beside her, their hands slick with her blood as they begged her to hold on. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but there was nothing they could do. Elle, an innocent bystander, had been caught in a storm of violence meant for others. Jake Duffy and Kieran Selden, Chapman's intended targets, were wounded but survived, their lives forever marked by the night's carnage. 3 other bystanders were injured, their holiday shattered by a senseless act. Police descended on Wallasey Village, their sirens cutting through the festive glow. The Lighthouse Pub, once a haven, was now a crime scene, cordoned off with yellow tape. Shell casings littered the ground, each one a silent witness to the brutality. Detectives worked through the night, collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses, many of whom were too shaken to speak. The community was in shock. Wallasey wasn't a place for gang wars, for machine guns, for the murder of a young woman whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. The investigation moved swiftly. Surveillance cameras around the pub captured grainy footage of a hooded figure fleeing the scene, his movements erratic but deliberate. Police traced the figure to a nearby street where a burned-out Mercedes was found hours later. The car, stolen weeks earlier, was Chapman's getaway vehicle, torched to destroy evidence, but forensic teams were meticulous. Inside the wreckage, they found traces of Chapman's DNA on a discarded cigarette butt, a single thread from his jacket caught on a fence near the pub, match fibers found at his home. The noose was tightening. Chapman, sensing the heat, went on the run. He fled to Wales, hiding out in a caravan park under a false name, his bravado replaced by paranoia. But Liverpool's police force was relentless. Using phone data, they tracked his movements, pinpointing his location within days. On January 10, 2023, Armed officers stormed the caravan, dragging Chapman out in handcuffs. He said nothing, his face a mask of defiance. But the evidence spoke for him. His Scorpion was later recovered, hidden in a stash house linked to the Beechwood gang, its barrel still bearing traces of the bullets that killed L. As Chapman sat in custody, the investigation uncovered the chilling details of his plan. He spent weeks stalking Duffy and Selden, driven by a feud over drug turf that had spiraled into obsession. On Christmas Eve, he'd received a tip that his rivals were at the Lighthouse pub. Armed and fueled by cocaine, he saw his chance to make a name for himself. L. Edwards was never his target, just collateral damage in a war she had no part in. The callousness of it was staggering. A young woman's life, snuffed out for nothing more than a gangster's ego. The trial began in June 2023 at Liverpool Crown Court, and it was a spectacle of grief and rage. Elle's family filled the gallery, their faces etched with pain. Her father, Tim Edwards, spoke of his daughter's light, her dreams, the future stolen from her. "She was our everything," he said, his voice breaking. "And now she's gone because of a coward with a gun." Prosecutors laid out a meticulous case, weaving together CCTV footage, DNA evidence, and witness testimony. Scorpion, they proved, was Chapman's, its serial number traced to a batch smuggled from Eastern Europe. His phone records showed texts bragging about the hit, his arrogance laid bare for the jury. Chapman's defense was feeble. He claimed he wasn't the shooter, that he'd been framed by rivals within the Beechwood gang. He pointed to Thomas Waring, a low-level associate who'd helped him destroy evidence, as the real culprit. But Waring, who'd pleaded guilty to lesser charges, turned on Chapman, testifying about his role in burning the Mercedes and hiding the gun. The jury saw through Chapman's lies. His DNA, his texts, his flight to Wales, it all pointed to one truth. On July 7th, 2023, Connor Chapman was found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and a slew of firearms charges. The judge sentenced him to life in prison with a minimum term of 48 years, one of the longest sentences in British history. Waring received 9 years for his role in the cover-up, but justice, as it so often does, felt hollow. Elle Edwards was gone, her family left to pick up the pieces of a life shattered by violence. Wallacey mourned her with vigils, her face immortalized in murals across the city, a reminder of the cost of gang warfare. The Lighthouse Pub, once a place of laughter, became a somber landmark, its walls whispering of the night that changed everything. Alice Mother Gaynor spoke at a memorial, her words heavy with grief. "My girl deserved to grow old, to chase her dreams. Instead, she's a memory, stolen by someone who didn't even know her name." The ripples of Elle's death reached far beyond Wallacey. In Liverpool, community leaders demanded action against the rising tide of gang violence. Police launched Operation Venetic, a crackdown on organized crime, seizing weapons and dismantling networks like the Beechwood gang. But for every arrest, new players emerged, the cycle of drugs and bloodshed seemingly endless. Elle's story became a rallying cry, a call for change in a city tired of burying its young. Yet questions linger like fog over the Mersey. How did a weapon like the Scorpion end up in the hands of a 22-year-old thug? Why did the gang feud escalate to such a deadly climax? And who else knew of Chapman's plan? Some whisper of a larger network, of kingpins pulling strings from the shadows untouched by the law. Others point to the failures of a system that let Chapman, with his long criminal history, slip through the cracks time and again. His parole violations, ignored until it was too late, are a stain on the justice system's record. For Elle's family, these questions offer no comfort. They visit her grave adorned with flowers and photos and speak to her as if she's still there. Her salon dreams, her infectious laugh, her love for Christmas, they live on in their memories, but the pain of her absence is a wound that never heals. In Wallacey, the rain falls as it did that night, soft and unrelenting, washing away the blood but not the sorrow. The Lighthouse Pub still stands, its lights dimmer now, a monument to a life cut short by a war that wasn't hers. As we leave Liverpool behind, the shadows beckon us onward. Join us for part 4, where we unravel the chilling tale of Summer Inman, a young mother whose disappearance exposed a family's darkest secrets. Until then, let the rain guide you into the night. Part 4, The Betrayal of Summer Inman, 2011, Logan, Ohio. In the quiet town of Logan, Ohio, nestled among rolling hills and whispering forests, life moved at a gentle pace. It was a place where neighbors waved from porches, where church bells marked the rhythm of Sundays, and where secrets were buried deep beneath the surface. In March 2011, this small community was shaken to its core by a crime so chilling it would unravel a family and expose a darkness that no one saw coming. Summer Inman, a 25-year-old mother with a radiant smile, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of betrayal that led to the heart of those she trusted most. This is her story, a tale of love twisted into obsession and a family's descent into unimaginable horror. Summer Inman was a beacon of warmth in Logan, a young woman whose kindness touched everyone she met. With her soft brown hair and eyes that sparkled with hope, she had a way of making people feel seen. She worked as a bank teller, her days spent chatting with customers and dreaming of a better future for her 3 young children. Summer was a devoted mother, her life revolving around her kids, 2 boys and a girl, all under 6, whose laughter filled her modest apartment. But her marriage to William Will Inman Jr. was crumbling, a union marred by control and resentment that had driven her to seek a way out. Will, 27, was a man of contradictions. To outsiders, he was charming, a hard worker who helped run his family's cleaning business. But behind closed doors, he was possessive, his love for Summer tinged with a need to dominate. The couple had met as teenagers, their romance blossoming in the glow of youth. They married young, driven by passion and the promise of forever. But as the years passed, Will's insecurities grew, his grip on Summer tightening like a vice. He monitored her phone, questioned her friendships, and forbade her from working late shifts. Summer, desperate to protect her children, endured it until she couldn't. By early 2011, Summer had had enough. She filed for divorce, a bold step in a conservative town where family was everything. She moved out of the Inman family home, a sprawling property owned by Will's parents, Bill and Sandra Inman, and into a small apartment in Logan. The divorce was contentious, with Will fighting for custody of their children, claiming Summer was unfit. But Summer was resolute. She wanted freedom not just for herself, but for her kids, who she feared were being drawn into the Inman's toxic orbit. She confided in friends about strange incidents, tires slashed on her car, late-night phone calls with no one on the line. She suspected Will was behind it, but she had no proof. Bill and Sandra Inman, Will's parents, were pillars of the Logan community, at least on the surface. Bill, a gruff man in his 50s, ran the cleaning business with an iron fist, while Sandra, a devout churchgoer, presented herself as the perfect matriarch. They lived in a large house on the edge of town, surrounded by woods and a sense of isolation. To their neighbors, they were hardworking, God-fearing folks. But to Summer, they were something else entirely. She'd grown uneasy around them, sensing their disapproval of her decision to leave Will. Sandra, in particular, was fiercely protective of her son, her love bordering on obsession. Summer felt suffocated by their influence, their constant meddling in her marriage, their whispers about her parenting. On the evening of March 22, 2011, Summer was closing up at the Century National Bank, her workplace in downtown Logan. It was a chilly night, the streets quiet as the town settled into its evening routine. Summer had plans to meet a friend for dinner, a rare moment of lightness in her stressful life. She stepped out into the parking lot, her purse slung over her shoulder, her mind on her children waiting at home with a babysitter. She never made it to her car. When Summer didn't show up for dinner, her friend grew worried. Calls to her phone went unanswered, her apartment empty. By midnight, her family reported her missing, and Logan police sprang into action. The bank's security cameras offered the first clue. Grainy footage showed Summer walking toward her car, then suddenly veering out of frame, as if startled. A dark figure appeared briefly in the corner of the shot, too blurry to identify. Her car was still in the lot, unlocked, her keys and purse missing. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no witnesses, just an eerie absence where Summer should have been. Though the community rallied, as small towns do, volunteers combed the woods, flyers with Summer's face blanketed Logan, and prayer vigils filled the local church. Her children, too young to understand, clung to their grandparents, asking when Mommy would come home. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Police zeroed in on Will Inman, Summer's estranged husband, whose behavior raised red flags. He was cooperative, tearfully pleading for Summer's return in front of news cameras, but his story was shaky. He claimed he'd been at home the night she vanished, yet his phone records showed him in Logan, near the bank, around the time of her disappearance. Investigators turned their attention to the Inman family home, a place that felt more like a fortress than a residence. Bill and Sandra were defensive, insisting Will was innocent, that Summer had likely run off to start a new life. But their alibi for Will was vague, and their demeanor was cold, almost rehearsed. A search of the property yielded little at first. No blood, no weapons, no sign of Summer, but then a tip came in from a neighbor who'd seen a strange sight on March 22. A van belonging to the Inman's cleaning business parked near a deserted church on the outskirts of town. The church, Faith Tabernacle, was a place the Inmans attended, a small, run-down building with a history of odd rumors. The police descended on Faith Tabernacle, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. In the churchyard, hidden among overgrown weeds, was an old septic tank, its lid sealed with fresh cement. When officers pried it open, a foul odor hit them like a wave. Inside, wrapped in a tarp, was Summer Inman's body. She'd been strangled, her neck bound with zip ties so tightly they'd cut into her skin. Her face, once so full of life, was unrecognizable, her body bruised from a struggle. The discovery was a gut punch to Logan, a town unaccustomed to such horror. Summer, their daughter, their friend, had been discarded like refuse in a place meant for worship. The autopsy painted a grim picture. Summer had fought for her life, her fingernails torn, her arms marked with defensive wounds. The zip ties suggested premeditation, a calculated act rather than a crime of passion. Traces of bleach on her body hinted at an attempt to destroy evidence, the detail that pointed to someone with cleaning expertise. Like the Inmans, the town was stunned. An entire family complicit in such a monstrous act? It seemed unthinkable. As the investigation deepened, a chilling narrative emerged. Summer's divorce had sparked a firestorm within the Inman family. Will, unable to accept her rejection, had grown increasingly volatile, his anger fueled by his parents' encouragement. Bill and Sandra saw Summer as a threat, a woman who dared to defy their son and tarnish their family's name. They'd hatched a plan, prosecutors alleged, to teach her a lesson. On March 22, they lured Summer from the bank under the pretense of discussing custody. Sandra, with her soft voice and church-going charm, had likely been the bait, convincing Summer to meet. But there was no meeting, only a trap. According to Sandra's eventual confession, the plan was to abduct Summer and scare her into dropping the divorce. They drove her to the church, where things spiraled out of control. Will, consumed by rage, tightened the zip ties around Summer's neck, ignoring her pleas. Bill and Sandra, instead of stopping him, watched as she gasped for air, her life slipping away. When it was over, they panicked, hiding her body in the septic tank and sealing it with cement from Bill's shed, the van, the bleach, the church. It was all part of a cover-up orchestrated by a family bound by loyalty and cruelty. The trial, which began in 2012, was a spectacle of grief and outrage. Logan's courthouse was packed, the air heavy with tension. Summer's family, led by her mother, Debbie, sat in silent agony, their eyes fixed on the Inmans. Prosecutors laid out a meticulous case, using phone records, forensic evidence, and Sandra's confession to paint a picture of a family conspiracy. The zip ties, purchased by Bill days before the murder, were a damning link. Fibers from the Inman's van matched those found on Summer's body, and tire tracks near the church confirmed their presence. Sandra's attempt to minimize her role, claiming she only meant to talk to Summer, fell flat against the brutality of the crime. Will's defense argued he'd acted in a fit of passion, driven to madness by Summer's decision to leave him. Bill and Sandra's attorneys claimed they were bystanders swept up in their son's chaos, but the jury saw through the lies. The planning, the execution, the cover-up, it was too deliberate, too cold. In April 2012, all three were found guilty. Will and Bill were sentenced to life in prison without parole, their faces impassive as the verdict was read. Sandra, who had cooperated with prosecutors, received a lighter sentence, 15 years with the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in applause, but for Summer's family it was a hollow victory. No sentence could bring her back. Logan struggled to make sense of the tragedy. The Inmans, once respected, were now pariahs. Their cleaning business shuttered, their home abandoned. Faith Tabernacle, tainted by the crime, closed its doors, its congregation scattered. Summer's children, now in the care of her family, grew up with stories of their mother's love, her dreams for them, her courage in standing up to the Inmans. Debbie, Summer's mother, became an advocate for domestic violence victims, channeling her grief into a fight for others like her daughter. Yet the shadows of Summer's death linger. Why did the Inmans go to such lengths to control her? Was it pride, obsession, or something darker? A family dynamic so twisted it bred violence. Some in Logan whisper of other secrets, of rumors about the Inman's business dealings or their influence in the church. The septic tank, a grim symbol of their betrayal, was drained and filled. But its memory haunts the town. And what of Sandra's parole? In 2026, she could walk free, a prospect that terrifies Summer's family. Will she carry the weight of her guilt or slip back into a world that wants to forget her? For those who love Summer, the pain is a constant companion. Her children, now teenagers, visit her grave, leaving flowers and notes, their mother's absence a wound that never heals. In Logan, the hills are still green, the church bells still ring, but the innocence of the town is gone. The rain falls softly, as it did the night Summer vanished, washing over the streets where she once walked. Her smile, her laughter, her dreams, they live on in the hearts of those who knew her, but the darkness of the Inman's betrayal casts a long shadow. As we leave Logan behind, the journey through the shadows continues. Join us for part 5, where we unravel the tragic tale of Emily Longley, a young woman whose life was stolen by a lover's jealousy in the seaside town of Bournemouth, England. Until then, let the rain carry you into the night. Part 5, The Stolen Light of Emily Longley, 2011, Bournemouth, England. In the seaside town of Bournemouth, England, where the waves crash against golden sands and the air carries the salt of the ocean, life feels like a postcard. It's a place of charm and tranquility, where families stroll along the pier and young dreamers chase futures under the endless sky. But in May 2011, this idyllic haven was shattered by a crime so cruel, it left a community reeling. Emily Longley, a 17-year-old with a radiant spirit and a heart full of promise, was taken from the world by the one person she trusted most. This is her story. A tale of love twisted into possession, of a family's desperate fight for justice, and of a darkness that hid behind a privileged facade. Emily Longley was a star in every sense, with her cascading blonde hair, sparkling green eyes, and a smile that could light up the gloomiest day. She was impossible to ignore. Born in Auckland, New Zealand, Emily had moved to Bournemouth with her family at the age of 10, her adventurous spirit thriving in the vibrant coastal town. At 17, she was a budding model and aspiring makeup artist, her Instagram filled with glamorous selfies and glimpses of a life brimming with possibility. She was studying business at Brockenhurst College, her ambition matched only by her kindness. To her friends, she was a confidant. To her family, she was their pride and joy. Emily was the girl who made the world brighter, who dreamed of leaving her mark. But beneath her confident exterior, Emily was navigating the complexities of youth. She was drawn to excitement, to people who lived on the edge. And that's how she met Elliot Turner. At 20, Elliot was the epitome of privilege. A handsome, wealthy young man with a flashy lifestyle that turned heads. His family owned a sprawling home in Bournemouth's affluent Queen's Park, complete with a converted garage where Elliot lived like a king, hosting wild parties fueled by champagne and bravado. His father, Lee, owned a jewelry business, and his mother, Anita, doted on him, indulging his every whim. To the outside world, Elliot was a catch, charming, confident, and dripping with charisma. But there was another side to him, one that Emily would discover too late. Elliot and Emily's romance began in the summer of 2010, a whirlwind of late-night drives, beachside dates, and stolen kisses under the stars. To Emily, Elliot was thrilling, a rebel who made her feel alive. But as their relationship deepened, cracks began to show. Elliot was possessive, his charm giving way to jealousy that burned like a fuse. He monitored Emily's phone, interrogated her about her friends, and flew into rages over imagined slumley. Fiercely independent, pushed back, but she was young, caught in the haze of first love. She confided in friends about his controlling behavior, yet something kept her tethered to him, perhaps the hope that he could change. By May 2011, the relationship was unraveling. Emily had spent a night with a friend, Luke Ashford, a casual fling that sparked Elliot's fury when he found out. He bombarded her with texts, alternating between apologies and threats. "I'll break your neck," he wrote in one message, a chilling warning that Emily brushed off as bluster. She told friends she was ready to end things, to reclaim her freedom, but Elliot had other plans. On the night of May 6, 2011, Emily went to Elliot's home, hoping to talk things out. It was a decision that would cost her everything. The next morning, May 7, 2011, Bournemouth woke to a tragedy. At 9:30 IEM, Anita Turner, Elliot's mother, called 999, her voice frantic. "She's not breathing," she sobbed. "My son's girlfriend? She's dead." Paramedics rushed to the Turner residence, a grand house that reeked of wealth. Inside Elliot's converted garage, they found Emily Longley lying on the bed. Her body still, her face serene. There were no obvious signs of trauma, no blood, no bruises, no chaos. To the responders, it looked like a sudden death, perhaps an overdose or a medical issue. But something felt wrong. The room was too tidy, the scene too staged, and Elliot, pacing nervously, was telling a story that didn't add up. Elliot claimed he and Emily had argued the previous night, a heated exchange fueled by alcohol and jealousy. He said she'd stormed off to bed and he'd slept on the couch, assuming she'd cool off by morning. When he checked on her, he said she was unresponsive. He insisted he'd tried to wake her, shaking her, calling her name, but she was gone. Anita and Lee, his parents, backed his story, their grief seemingly genuine. But as police arrived, their instincts kicked in. Emily was young, healthy, with no history of drug use or illness. Her death was no accident. The autopsy delivered a devastating truth. Emily had been strangled. Subtle marks on her neck, missed by paramedics, told of a violent struggle. Her windpipe was crushed, her hyoid bone fractured, signs of a deliberate, forceful act. There were no drugs in her system, no alcohol, nothing to explain her death but the hands that had choked the life from her. Police turned their attention to Elliot, whose story was already fraying. He claimed Emily had attacked him, that he had acted in self-defense, but there were no scratches on him, no signs of a fight. His calm demeanor, his rehearsed answers, raised suspicions. This wasn't grief, it was calculation. Investigators searched the Turner home and the evidence was damning. Elliot's computer revealed chilling Google searches, death by strangulation, and how to avoid punishment for a crime. His phone contained a flurry of texts to friends, boasting that he'd sorted Emily and would soon be free to live his lavish life. In one letter, written from his cell after his arrest, he bragged about driving a Range Rover and moving to Spain, convinced he'd outsmart the jury. But the most incriminating evidence came from a hidden source, a listening device planted by police in the Turner home after Emily's death. The recordings were a window into a family unraveling. Elliot, unaware he was being taped, admitted to choking Emily in a fit of rage, describing how he'd pinned her down as she gasped for air. He laughed about it, his voice devoid of remorse, as if her life was a game he'd won. Lee and Anita, his parents, were heard discussing how to cover it up, burning a confession letter Elliot had written, hiding his jacket, delaying the 911 call to craft a story. Anita, when asked why she hadn't called for help sooner, paused for 6 agonizing seconds before muttering, "I didn't think she was dead." It was a lie, and the tapes exposed it. Elliot Turner was arrested on May 8, 2011, charged with murder. Lee and Anita were charged with perverting the course of justice. Their complicity in the cover-up, undeniable. Bournemouth, a town unaccustomed to such scandal, was gripped by the case. The Turners, with their wealth and status, had seemed untouchable, but now their gilded world was crumbling. Emily's family, led by her father Mark and mother Caroline, were devastated, their grief tempered by a fierce resolve to see justice done. Mark spoke to the press, his voice raw with pain. "Emily was our light, our future. She came halfway around the world for a better life, and he took it from her." The trial, which began in April 2012 at Winchester Crown Court, was a clash of worlds. Privilege versus justice, arrogance versus truth. Prosecutors painted Elliot as a spoiled, entitled narcissist, a man who saw Emily as a trophy to control, not a person to love. They detailed his jealousy, his violent outbursts, his chilling lack of remorse. The listening device recordings were played in court, Elliot's callous laughter echoing through the silence, leaving jurors pale. Emily's friends testified about her fear of Elliot, her plans to leave him, her vibrant spirit that he'd tried to extinguish. The Google searches, the texts, the letter. It was a portrait of premeditation, not passion. Elliot's defense was a desperate gamble. His lawyers argued that Emily's death was an accident, a moment of panic during a mutual struggle. They claimed she'd attacked him, that he'd restrained her without meaning to kill. They even suggested she might have died of natural causes, a theory debunked by the autopsy. Elliot took the stand, his charm now a hollow mask. his lies unraveling under cross-examination. He admitted to the affair with Luke Ashford, fueling his anger, but insisted he loved Emily, that her death was a tragic mistake. The jury wasn't swayed. His arrogance, his boasts, his family's complicity, it all pointed to guilt. Lee and Anita's trial was equally damning. The recordings showed them destroying evidence, coaching Elliot on his story, prioritizing their son over the girl who died in their home. Their defense claimed they were in shock, acting out of love for their son, but the jury saw it for what it was, a calculated attempt to evade justice. On May 22, 2012, Elliot Turner was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 16 years. Lee and Anita were convicted of perverting the course of justice, each receiving 27 months. The courtroom was silent, the weight of the verdict sinking in. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Bournemouth mourned Emily with an outpouring of love. Vigils lined the beach, candles flickering against the waves, her face immortalized in tributes across the town. Her family channeled their grief into advocacy, speaking out against domestic violence and the dangers of coercive control. Mark Longley, Emily's father, became a voice for change, his words a plea for others to heed the warning signs. If someone had taken Elliot's threat seriously, he said, my girl might still be here. Caroline, Emily's mother, kept her daughter's memory alive through a foundation, supporting young women, chasing their dreams as Emily had. But the scars remain. In 2020, reports surfaced that Elliot had been attacked in prison, beaten by inmates enraged by his lack of remorse. He'd hung photos of Emily in his cell, boasting of fan letters from women as if her death was a trophy. The assault was a grim reminder of the hatred he'd sown. With parole eligibility looming in 2027, Emily's family braces for the possibility of his release, a prospect that reopens old wounds. Lee and Anita, released in 2013 after serving half their sentences, returned to the house where Emily died, a choice that baffled and angered the community. Questions linger like the mist over Bournemouth's cliffs. How did a family so consumed by wealth and status fall so far? Were there signs of Elliot's violence that went ignored, red flags dismissed by those closest to him? And what of the culture that enabled him? A world where privilege shielded accountability until it was too late. Emily's story is a warning, a reminder that love can be a mask for something far darker. In Bournemouth, the waves still crash, the pier still glows, but Emily's absence is a void that nothing can fill. Her dreams, her laughter, her light, they live on in those who loved her, but the shadow of her loss is eternal. As the rain falls softly, washing over the sands where Emily once walked, we leave Bournemouth behind. Join us for part 6, where we unravel the harrowing tale of Jordan Worth, a woman whose angelic facade hid a monster within, and the man who survived her cruelty. Until then, let the rain guide you into the night. Part 6, The Angelic Mask of Jordan Worth, 2018, England. Into the rolling countryside of Bedfordshire, England, where fields stretch toward the horizon and quaint villages hum with quiet life, a story unfolded that defied every expectation. It was a tale of love turned into torment, of a woman whose delicate beauty concealed a heart of cruelty, and of a man whose strength was tested in ways unimaginable. Jordan Worth, a young mother with an angelic face, was a name that would become synonymous with horror, not for what was done to her, but for what she did to the man she claimed to love. This is the story of Alex Skeel, a survivor of unimaginable abuse, and the unprecedented case that shattered stereotypes and rewrote the narrative of domestic violence. Jordan Worth was the picture of perfection. At 22, she was petite with soft features and a radiant smile that could charm anyone. Raised in a wealthy family, she grew up wanting for nothing, her wardrobe filled with designer clothes, her social media a curated gallery of beauty and success. She was a student at the prestigious Bedford College, studying art history with dreams of becoming a teacher. But Jordan's true passion was attention. She thrived on being the center of every room, her charisma drawing admirers like moths to a flame. To the world, she was a saint, volunteering at animal shelters and raising funds for starving children in Africa. She was, in every sense, untouchable. Alex Skeel, on the other hand, was the boy next door. Born in 1995 in the small town of Kings Lynn, he was one half of a set of twins, welcomed into a loving middle-class family. Despite a challenging start, born prematurely with hydrocephalus, a condition that caused fluid buildup in his brain, Alex grew into a bright, athletic young man. He was shy, focused on his studies at Bedford College, where he pursued a degree in sports science. With his boyish grin and quiet confidence, he was well-liked but reserved, more comfortable in the gym than in the spotlight. Love for Alex was a distant thought, until he met Jordan. Their paths crossed in 2012 during their first year at college. Jordan, with her effortless charm, was the star of the campus, surrounded by suitors. Alex, unassuming and modest, never imagined she'd notice him, but Jordan did. She approached him one crisp autumn day, her smile disarming, her words laced with flirtation. For Alex, it was love at first sight. Jordan was his dream girl, beautiful, intelligent, and inexplicably interested in him. Their romance was a whirlwind of late-night talks, shared laughter, and stolen moments that felt like magic. To their friends, they were the perfect couple, their social media filled with photos of cozy dates and heartfelt captions. But perfection, as it so often does, was a lie. The first 6 months were a fairy tale. Jordan showered Alex with affection, planning romantic surprises and declaring her love in poetic messages. Alex, smitten, gave her his heart, believing they were building a future together. They moved into a shared apartment, their lives intertwining as they balanced college and part-time jobs. But as the months passed, Jordan's warmth began to fade. What started as playful teasing turned into control, her love morphing into something suffocating. She demanded to know Alex's every move, checked his phone obsessively, and flew into rages over innocent interactions with friends. Alex, blinded by love, brushed it off as care, convincing himself her jealousy was proof of her devotion. By 2013, Jordan's control had tightened like a noose. She dictated what Alex could wear, choosing his clothes and discarding anything she didn't approve of. She isolated him from his friends, deleting their numbers from his phone, and responding to their messages with insults, posing as Alex to drive them away. His family, once his anchor, became distant. Jordan forbade him from visiting, claiming they were a bad influence. Alex's twin brother, noticing the change, tried to intervene, but Jordan's grip was ironclad. To the outside world, they still looked happy, their social media a facade of bliss, but behind closed doors, Jordan was rewriting Alex's life. The turning point came during Alex's 18th birthday celebration in August 2013. Jordan, invited to a family party at the Skill home, erupted in a jealous rage. She attacked a 15-year-old neighbor, a girl she accused of being too friendly, with Alex pulling her hair and scratching her face in front of stunned guests. The outburst was a glimpse of Jordan's true nature, a crack in her angelic mask. Alex's parents, horrified, urged him to end the relationship, and for the first time, he listened. That night, he told Jordan he was done, moving back to his family's home. For 6 months, they were apart, Alex rebuilding his life, returning to college, and trying to forget the girl who'd consumed him. But Jordan wasn't finished. In December 2013, she called Alex with news that changed everything. She was pregnant. She claimed it was his child, her voice soft with apologies, promising she'd changed. Alex, overwhelmed and hopeful, believed her. His parents, softened by the prospect of a grandchild, welcomed Jordan into their home. In April 2014, Jordan and Alex married in a small ceremony, and soon after, their son William was born. For a brief moment, it seemed like a new beginning. Jordan was attentive, caring, a devoted mother. Alex, now a father, was determined to make it work. But the peace was a mirage. By mid-2014, Jordan's darkness resurfaced. Pregnant again, she grew erratic, her mood swinging from affection to rage. She demanded they move out of the Skill family home, cutting Alex off from his support system. They rented a house in Stewartby, a quiet village where Jordan's control became absolute. She took Alex's earnings, spent his money on luxuries, and forbade him from seeing his parents or brother. When their daughter, Alice, was born in 2015, Alex's joy was overshadowed by fear. Jordan's love had vanished, replaced by a cruelty that would push him to the edge of survival. The abuse began subtly, testing Alex's limits. During a home renovation, Jordan threw a hammer at his head, leaving a gash that bled for hours. When he begged for help, she laughed, telling him to crawl away and die. Alex, stunned, bandaged the wound himself, too ashamed to seek medical care. The incident was a turning point. Jordan realized she could do anything, and Alex would stay silent. Over the next 3 years, her cruelty escalated into a nightmare of physical and psychological torment. She beat him daily, using fists, knives, and anything within reach. She poured boiling water on him as he slept, leaving burns that scarred his skin. She starved him, banning him from the kitchen and forcing him to eat scraps left by her and the children. Alex, once a fit 170 pounds, withered to under 100, his body a map of bruises, cuts, and... Jordan's sadism was sophisticated. She forbade Alex from sleeping on their bed, relegating him to a mat on the floor without a blanket or pillow like a dog. She woke him with attacks, slashing his skin or scalding him, then went to bed as if nothing had happened. She knocked out his teeth, sliced his arm with a kitchen knife, and beat him with a screwdriver, tearing his shoulder ligaments. Alex, broken psychologically, stopped resisting. He believed this was normal, that he deserved it, that love meant enduring pain. Jordan, meanwhile, maintained their perfect image online, posting old photos of happy moments, her captions proclaiming their undying love. The outside world was blind to the horror. Neighbors heard screams, but dismissed them as domestic spats. Jordan's charm disarmed anyone who questioned her, her angelic face a shield against suspicion. She convinced Alex to quit his job, fearing his co-workers would notice his injuries, leaving him completely dependent. He was a prisoner in his own home, his children the only light in his darkness. Yet even they were weaponized. Jordan threatened to take them away if he disobeyed, knowing they were his reason to live. The breaking point came in June 2018 during a routine police visit prompted by a neighbor's call. Officers arrived at the Sturby house, expecting a minor dispute. Instead, they found Alex, emaciated and bloodied, clutching a fresh wound on his arm. His face was a patchwork of bruises, his body skeletal. Jordan, calm and composed, claimed Alex was mentally unstable, that he'd harmed himself. But one officer, sensing the truth, insisted on medical attention. At the hospital, doctors were horrified. Alex's arm was nearly septic, his burns severe, his weight dangerously low. He was hours from death, his body shutting down from years of abuse. As Alex recovered, the truth poured out. With the support of a psychologist, he detailed the years of torture, his voice trembling with shame and relief. Jordan was arrested, her angelic facade crumbling under the weight of evidence. Photos of Alex's injuries, medical records, and neighbor testimonies painted a chilling picture. At her trial in April 2018, prosecutors made history. Jordan Worth was the first woman in the UK convicted of coercive control and grievous bodily harm in a domestic violence case. The courtroom was silent as the judge described her as a sadist, her beauty a mask for a monster within. She was sentenced to 7.5 years, a landmark ruling that stunned the nation. Jordan's defense was feeble. She claimed Alex provoked her, that he cheated and driven her to violence. She insisted he was unstable, that her actions were exaggerated. But the evidence, his scars, his testimony, the sheer brutality told a different story. Even her children, now in the care of Alex and his family, were a testament to her cruelty, their young lives marred by her reign of terror. Jordan, once untouchable, was now a pariah. Her name synonymous with a new kind of evil. Alex's recovery was a miracle. With therapy and the love of his family, he rebuilt his life, gaining weight and strength. He became an advocate for male victims of domestic violence, sharing his story to break the stigma. "I thought I had to be strong, to stay silent," he told a documentary crew, "but speaking out saved me." His children, William and Alice, thrived under his care, their laughter a reminder of what he'd fought for. In 2023, Jordan was released on parole after serving 5 years, barred from contacting Alex or their children. She reportedly moved on, engaged to a new partner, and pregnant again, her past, a shadow she refuses to acknowledge. But questions linger, like the mist over Bedfordshire's fields. How did Jordan's cruelty go unnoticed for so long? Were there signs, moments of rage, hints of control that her family or friends ignored? And what drove her to such extremes, to transform love into torture? Some point to her privileged upbringing, a life without consequences that bred entitlement. Others see a deeper pathology, a need for power that consumed her. The case exposed a gap in society's understanding of abuse, challenging the myth that only men can be perpetrators, that only women can be victims. For Alex, the scars remain physical and emotional. He visits his children's school plays, coaches their soccer games, and holds them close, grateful for every moment. Bedfordshire, with its quiet beauty, is both a refuge and a reminder of the hell he survived. The house in Stewart B stands empty, its walls silent witnesses to Jordan's reign. The rain falls softly, as it did during those dark years, washing away the echoes of pain, but not the memory. Alec's story is a testament to resilience, a beacon for those still trapped in silence, a warning that evil can wear the face of an angel. As we leave Bedfordshire behind, the shadows call us forward. Join us for part 7, where we unravel the tragic tale of Zara Alina, a young woman whose vibrant life was stolen in a brutal attack on the streets of London. Until then, let the rain guide you in the night. Part 7, The Stolen Dreams of Zara Alina, 2022 Ilford, London, England. In the vibrant mosaic of East London, where the streets hum with diversity and the night pulses with life, Ilford is a place of contrasts. It's a neighborhood of bustling markets, neon-lit bars, and quiet residential corners, where dreams are chased under the glow of streetlights. In June 2022, this lively community was shattered by a crime so brutal, it left a city grieving. Zara Alina, a 35-year-old woman with a heart full of compassion and a future brimming with promise, was taken in a fleeting moment of violence. Her story is one of light extinguished, of a predator who stalked the shadows, and of a family's fight to honor her legacy in a world forever changed. Zara Alina was a force of nature. With her cascading black curls, radiant smile, and eyes that sparkled with purpose, she was a woman who left an imprint on everyone she met. Born in 1986 to a Pakistani-British family, Zara was the eldest of 5 children raised by a single mother who instilled in her a fierce sense of justice and love. From a young age, Zara was a dreamer, her passions as varied as the city she called home. She was a tap dancer, her feet weaving stories with every step, a swimmer finding freedom in the water's embrace, a skater gliding through life with a grace that captivated. But above all, Zara was a protector, her heart set on becoming a lawyer to give voice. At 35, Zara was on the cusp of greatness. She graduated from the University of Westminster, her law degree a testament to years of hard work while caring for her mother and grandmother. She'd recently landed a job with the Crown Prosecution Service, a stepping stone to her dream of advocating for survivors of violence. Zara was more than her ambitions, though. She was a friend who listened with her whole heart, a daughter who called her mother daily, a volunteer who fed the homeless and rescued stray cats. Her friend Sanjina described her as radiant, a woman whose optimism could lift the darkest mood. To her family, she was their anchor, their joy, their pride. On the night of June 25, 2022, Zara was in her element. She'd spent the evening with a friend at the Ilford Big Spoon, a lively bar where laughter mingled with the clink of glasses. It was a warm summer night, the kind that begged for late-night adventures. Zara, dressed in a flowing skirt and sneakers, was in high spirits, her laughter echoing through the crowd. She sipped water, her focus on the moment, the connection with her friend. Around 2 a.m., they parted ways. Her friend took a taxi, but Zara, leaving just a 10-minute walk away, chose to stroll home along Cranbrook Road, a familiar residential street. She felt safe, confident, untouchable. She didn't know a predator was watching. Jordan McSweeney was a name that carried weight in Ilford's underbelly. At 29, he was a career criminal with a rap sheet stretching back to his teens, 28 convictions for 69 offenses, from theft and assault to racially aggravated harassment. His social media boasted of a huge collection of weapons. His posts glorifying a life of crime with fake FBI wanted posters and quotes about living outside the law. But McSweeney was a product of the streets, a man whose anger and entitlement festered with every brush with authority. Released from prison on June 17, 2022, after serving time for criminal damage and carrying a blade, he was on parole, bound by strict conditions. But McSweeney had no intention of playing by the rules. That night, he was prowling Ilford, fueled by alcohol and a twisted resolve. Surveillance cameras captured him earlier, harassing women outside a nightclub, hugging them without consent and trying to force kisses. Kicked out after 11 p.m., he wandered the streets, his mind set on violence. He'd already stalked one woman, following her to a store and waiting outside, only to lose her when she reached home. Frustrated but undeterred, he continued his hunt, his eyes scanning the darkness for a new target. When he saw Zara walking alone on Cranbrook Road, her confident stride illuminated by street lights, he knew he'd found her. The attack was swift and savage. At 2:15 a.m., McSweeney struck, emerging from the shadows like a ghost. He grabbed Zara from behind, one hand clamping over her mouth, the other around her neck, choking her into silence. She fought desperately, her nails clawing at his arms, her body twisting against his grip. But McSweeney was relentless. He dragged her into a wooded area off the street, a forgotten corner where the city's noise faded to nothing. There, in 9 agonizing minutes, he unleashed a brutality that defied comprehension. Zara's screams were swallowed by the night, her struggle unseen, unheard. When it was over, McSweeney walked away, leaving her broken body on the cold ground, her belongings scattered like the pieces of her life. At 2:30 a.m., a passerby found Zara on the sidewalk, her clothes torn, her body bruised beyond recognition. The woman, a nurse, performed CPR, her hands trembling as she tried to will life back into Zara's still form. Paramedics arrived, their faces grim as they worked in vain. Zara was pronounced dead at 9:58 a.m. on June 26, her injuries too severe to overcome. The scene was chaos, her purse, phone, and shoes strewn across the grass, a testament to her fight. Ilford, a place of community and warmth, was now a crime scene, its heart broken by a loss too vast to fathom. Police moved with urgency, their boots heavy on Cranbrook Road. Surveillance footage from the Big Spoon and nearby streets offered the first clues. A hooded figure, McSweeney, trailing Zara in the early hours. Cameras tracked him to a park where he was seen discarding bloodied clothes, his demeanor cold and deliberate. Forensic teams scoured the crime scene, finding his DNA on Zara's body, his fingerprints on her phone. A bloody shoe print matched trainers found in his van, a makeshift home parked in Gun Hill Park. By June 27, police had their suspect. They raided the van, arresting McSweeney as he slept, his face blank, his silence deafening. The investigation revealed a chilling truth. McSweeney had been a ticking time bomb. His parole conditions, regular meetings with an officer were ignored, his absence unnoticed until it was too late. On June 22, authorities had begun the process to revoke his parole, but bureaucratic delays left him free. He'd missed 2 meetings, his whereabouts unknown, yet no one acted swiftly enough to stop him. Chief Inspector Dave Williams, leading the case, was blunt. McSweeney was hunting that night. Zara was not his target. She was his opportunity. The randomness of it, the senselessness, was a wound that cut deep. Zara's family was shattered. Her mother, devastated, couldn't eat or sleep, her world reduced to the memory of her daughter's voice. Her aunt, Farah, a psychotherapist in Portugal, flew to London, her grief channeled into action. She met with police, spoke to the media, and vowed to protect Zara's legacy from sensationalism. The family held a memorial on July 2, a silent march through Ilford, white-clad mourners carrying Zara's photo, their tears mingling with the rain. Over 120 organizations joined, a coalition against violence, their voices demanding change. Zara was our light, Farah said, her words a plea. Her death must mean something. The trial, held at the Old Bailey in late 2022, was a reckoning. McSweeney, defiant at first, pleaded guilty to murder and assault, his silence a final act of cowardice. Prosecutors detailed his history, his escalation from petty crime to predatory violence, his utter lack of remorse. CCTV footage played in court showed him stalking Zara, his movements predatory, his intent clear. The DNA, the shoe prints, the discarded clothes. It was an airtight case. On December 14, 2022, McSweeney was sentenced to life with a minimum of 38 years, later reduced to 33 on appeal, a controversial decision that sparked outrage. The judge called him a danger to society, his crime a stain on London's soul. But the verdict was only half the story. An inquest revealed systemic failures that allowed McSweeney to roam free. The parole service's inaction, the delayed police response, the missed opportunities to detain him. Each was a thread in a tapestry of neglect. Zaya's family, led by Farah, became advocates, joining marches and campaigns to combat violence against women. They demanded stricter parole oversight, better support for victims, and an end to the culture that lets predators slip through the cracks. Zara's death was preventable, Farah told a crowd in Trafalgar Square. We failed her, and we must do better. Il Fordos has not forgotten Zara. Her face adorns murals, her name a rallying cry for change. The Big Spoon, once a place of joy, is quieter now, its patrons haunted by the night she left and never returned. Zara's mother visits her grave, whispering to her daughter, her heart's heavy with what-ifs. The children she dreamed of having, the cases she hoped to fight, the cats she planned to save. Their memories now, fragments of a life stolen. In Gun Hill Park, where McSweeney hid, the grass grows over the scars, but the pain remains, a wound that time cannot heal. Questions linger, like the fog over London's streets. How did a man with 69 convictions evade justice for so long? Were there others who knew of his plans, accomplices who slipped away? And what of the system that failed Zara? Its delays and oversights, a betrayal as profound as the crime itself. Some whisper of a broader network, of criminals shielded by apathy or corruption. Others point to society's blind spots, the assumption that women are safe in familiar places, that danger is always a stranger's face. Zara's story is a warning, a call to see the shadows before they strike. For her family, the fight continues. Fira marches, speaks and writes, her voice a beacon for those silenced by violence. Zara's siblings carry her spirit, their lives shaped by her love and loss. In Ilford, the markets still bustle, the bars still glow, but Zara's absence is a void that echoes through the streets. The rain falls softly, as it did that June night, washing over the pavement where she fought for her life. Her dreams, her laughter, her courage, they live on in those who loved her, but the darkness of her death is a shadow that never fades. As we leave Ilford behind, the journey through the shadows presses on. Join us for part 8, where we unravel the tragic tale of Lori Soares, a pregnant woman whose disappearance exposed a web of lies in Salt Lake City. Until then, let the rain guide you into the night. Part 8, The Vanishing of Lori Soares, 2004, Salt Lake City, Utah. In the heart of Salt Lake City, Utah, where the Wasatch Mountains cast their protective shadow and the streets hum with the quiet rhythm of faith and family, a tragedy unfolded in the spring of 2004. It was a city known for its serenity, its tight-knit communities bound by shared values, but beneath this tranquil surface, a darkness was brewing. Lori Soares, a 43-year-old mother pregnant with her 4th child, vanished without a trace, leaving behind a life that seemed perfect but hid a web of secrets. This is her story, a tale of love tainted by deceit, of a family torn apart by betrayal, and of a community forced to confront the unthinkable. Lori Soares was a woman who radiated warmth. With her gentle smile, chestnut hair, and eyes that held a quiet strength, she was the kind of person who made everyone feel at home. Born in 1960 to a devout Mormon family, Lori was raised in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, her life shaped by its teachings of love, service, and family. She was a dedicated mother to her 3 children, 2 teenage daughters and a young son, whose laughter filled their modest home in West Valley City. Lori worked as a receptionist at a local dental office, her steady presence a comfort to patients and colleagues alike. At 43, she was expecting her 4th child, a boy, and her joy was infectious. To those who knew her, Lori was a pillar, a woman whose faith and resilience carried her through life's challenges. But Lori's life wasn't as idyllic as it appeared. Her marriage to Mark Hacking, her husband of 6 years, was under strain, though few outside their inner circle knew the extent of it. Mark, 28, was a charming, ambitious man with a boyish grin and a knack for storytelling. He worked as a psychiatric aide at a local hospital, his compassion for patients earning him respect. To their friends and family, Mark and Lori were the perfect Mormon couple. Devoted to each other, active in their church, and excited about their growing family. They lived in a small apartment near the University of Utah, their walls adorned with photos of temple weddings and family outings. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming, and they ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. Mark was a man living a double life. To Lori and their community, he was a pre-med student on the verge of graduating from the University of Utah, accepted into a prestigious medical school in North Carolina. He spoke of his future with confidence, regaling friends with tales of late-night study sessions and competitive exams. Lori, proud of his achievements, supported him tirelessly, working long hours to fund his education while raising their children. She believed in Mark's dreams, in the life they were building together. But it was all a lie. Mark wasn't a student. He'd never enrolled at the university, never taken the MCAT, never applied to medical school. His stories were fabrications, a house of cards built on years of deception. By July 2004, Mark's lies were unraveling. His family had begun planning a move to North Carolina, where he claimed to start medical school. Lori, 5 weeks pregnant, was packing their apartment, her excitement tempered by the stress of relocation, but whispers of doubt had reached her. A call from the medical school inquiring about Mark's application planted a seed of suspicion. Lori confronted him, her voice steady but her heart racing. Mark deflected, promising to clear up the misunderstanding, but the truth was closing in. He was a fraud, and Lori, the woman who trusted him completely, was about to discover the depth of his betrayal. On the morning of July 19, 2004, Lori went missing. Mark told police she'd gone for a jog in City Creek Canyon, a popular trail near their apartment, and never returned. He claimed he'd woken to find her gone, her running shoes missing, her car still parked outside. He called 911 at 10:07 a.m., his voice trembling with panic. "My wife, she's pregnant, and she hasn't come back," he said, his words choked with tears. Police launched a search, combing the canyon with volunteers, dogs, and helicopters. Lori's face appeared on flyers across Salt Lake City, her smile a haunting reminder of the woman who'd vanished. The community rallied, as Utah communities do, holding prayer vigils and scouring the hills for any sign of her. But something about Mark's story didn't add up. The canyon was a safe, well-traveled area, and Lori, cautious by nature, rarely jogged alone, especially while pregnant. Her running shoes, found in the apartment, showed no signs of recent use. Mark's behavior raised red flags. He was overly emotional one moment, eerily calm the next, his answers to police vague and inconsistent. Detectives dug deeper, and what they uncovered was a portrait of a man crumbling under the weight of his own lies. Lori's family, devastated but determined, pressed for answers. Her brother Paul noticed Mark avoiding questions about his medical school plans, his excuses growing flimsier. A call to the University of Utah confirmed the truth. Mark had never been a student. His transcripts, his acceptance letter, his entire academic career, it was all fiction. Lori's discovery of this betrayal, police theorized, was the spark that ignited a tragedy. On the night of July 18th, she'd confronted Mark again, this time with proof. The argument, fueled by years of deception, escalated into something deadly. Investigators searched the hacking apartment, and the evidence was chilling. In a dumpster nearby, they found a mattress stained with blood, later confirmed to be Lori's. A knife, discarded in another bin, bore traces of her DNA. Mark's car, parked blocks away, contained carpet fibers matching those in their home, along with a receipt for a new mattress purchased hours after Lori's disappearance. The pieces were falling into place. Mark had killed Lori, disposed of her body, and staged the jogging story to cover his tracks. But where was she? The search for Lori became a national story, dominating headlines and drawing comparisons to other high-profile cases. Salt Lake City, a city unaccustomed to such scandal, was gripped by grief and suspicion. Mark's family, prominent in the LDS community, stood by him at first, believing his tears were genuine. But as evidence mounted, even they began to waver. On August 2, 2004, Mark checked himself into a psychiatric hospital, claiming a mental breakdown. There he confessed to a fellow patient that he'd shot Lori in their bed, wrapped her body in garbage bags, and dumped her in a landfill. The patient, alarmed, alerted police, and the confession broke the case open. Mark was arrested that day, charged with first-degree murder. The landfill, a sprawling site on the city's outskirts, became the focus of a grueling search. Volunteers and cadaver dogs sifted through tons of refuse, their hope fading with each passing day. Lori's body was never found, a final cruelty that denied her family closure. But the evidence was overwhelming. Blood spatter in the apartment, traced to Lori, suggested a single gunshot to the head. The knife, the mattress, it all pointed to a calculated act, not a moment of passion. Mark had planned his cover-up, buying time to craft his story while the city searched for a woman already gone. The trial, held in April 2005 at the Salt Lake County Courthouse, was a spectacle of sorrow and betrayal. Prosecutors painted Mark as a pathological liar, a man whose fragile ego couldn't withstand exposure. They argued he'd killed Lori to silence her, to preserve the illusion he'd built. The blood, the dumpster finds, the confession to the patient was a damning narrative. Lori's family, led by her mother Thelma, filled the gallery, their faces etched with pain. Thelma spoke of Lori's love for her children, her excitement for the baby she'd never hold, her faith that had carried her through hardship. She trusted him, Thelma said, her voice breaking, and he took everything from her. Mark's defense was a desperate bid for leniency. His attorneys admitted he'd lied about his education but claimed Lori's death was an accident, a struggle over a gun that ended in tragedy. They pointed to his mental health struggles, his hospitalization, as evidence of remorse. But the jury saw through the facade. The planning, the disposal, the lies. It was too deliberate, too cold. On April 27, 2005, Mark Hacking was found guilty of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 6 years. Utah's indeterminate sentencing system leaving open the possibility of parole, a prospect that horrified Lori's family. Salt Lake City struggled to heal. The LDS community, shaken by the scandal, grappled with questions of trust and forgiveness. Lori's children, now in the care of her family, grew up with stories of their mother's love, her faith, her dreams for them. Thelma became their rock, her strength a tribute to the daughter she'd lost. The landfill, a grim reminder of the search, was capped and converted into a park, but its history lingers, a wound on the city's landscape. Mark, from his prison cell, has maintained a low profile, his parole hearings a distant but looming threat. In 2010, he expressed remorse in a letter to Lori's family, but they dismissed it as another manipulation, his words as empty as his promises. Questions persist, like the mist over the Wasatch Peaks. Where is Lori's body and why has it never been found? Was Mark's confession complete, or did he have help in disposing of her remains? Some whisper of a broader network, of friends or family who knew more than they admitted. Others point to the church's influence, wondering if Mark's status shielded him from scrutiny until it was too late. The case exposed a darker side of Utah's idyllic image, a reminder that even in a city of faith, evil can take root. Lori's story is a cautionary tale, a warning that the people we trust most can hide the deepest secrets. All right? For those who loved Lori, the pain is a constant companion. Her children, now adults, carry her memory in their hearts, their lives shaped by her absence. Thelma visits the canyon where Lori was said to have jogged, leaving flowers and whispering prayers. In Salt Lake City, the mountains still stand, the temple still shines, but Lori's loss is a shadow that never fades. The rain falls softly, as it did the morning she vanished, washing over the streets she once walked. Her kindness, her faith, her love, they live on in those who knew her, but the darkness of her death is a wound that time cannot heal. As we leave Salt Lake City behind, the shadows beckon us onward. Join us for part 9, where we unravel the chilling tale of Maria Louisa Asino, a woman whose paradise vacation in Costa Rica ended in a nightmare of violence. Until then, let the rain guide you into the night. Part 9, The Paradise Lost of Maria Louisa Asino, 2020, Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica. And in the lush embrace of Manuel Antonio, Costa Rica, where emerald jungles meet turquoise waves and the air hums with the song of toucans, paradise feels within reach. It's a place of escape where travelers from across the globe seek solace in nature's splendor, their worries washed away by the rhythm of the Pacific. In February 2020, this idyllic haven became the stage for a tragedy that would shatter the illusion of safety. Maria Louisa Asino, a 31-year-old woman from New York with a zest for life, came to Costa Rica for a dream vacation. Instead, she found herself in the grip of a predator. Her story, a haunting reminder that darkness can lurk even in the brightest places. Maria Louisa Asino was a woman who lived boldly. Born in 1988 to a close-knit Filipino-American family in Queens, New York, she was the youngest of 3 siblings, her infectious laugh and fearless spirit lighting up their modest home. With her warm brown eyes, cascading dark hair, and a smile that disarmed strangers, Maria was a force of nature. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a Manhattan tech startup, her creativity and drive earning her accolades. But her true passion was travel. She'd backpacked across Southeast Asia, trekked the Inca Trail, and danced under the Northern Lights. Her Instagram was a vibrant tapestry of adventures, each post captioned with her mantra, "Live without limits." At 31, Maria was planning her biggest adventure yet, a solo trip to Costa Rica. A gift to herself after a grueling year. Manuel Antonio, a coastal gem on Costa Rica's Pacific shore, was the perfect destination. Known for its pristine beaches, vibrant wildlife, and luxury villas, it promised the kind of escape Maria craved. She booked a week-long stay at a boutique Airbnb, a hillside villa with panoramic views of the ocean, and filled her itinerary with plans. Surfing lessons, yoga at sunrise. She arrived on February 12, 2020, her heart alight with anticipation. She texted her sister, Anna, a photo of the sunset, her words brimming with joy. "This is paradise." No one could have known that paradise was about to turn into a nightmare. Maria's first few days were a dream. She posted videos of sloths in the trees, her laughter mingling with the crash of waves. She befriended locals at a beachside cafe, her warmth drawing them in. She was cautious, as solo travelers often are, locking her villa at night, sharing her location with Anna, avoiding isolated areas after dark. But Manuel Antonio felt safe, its tourist-friendly vibe lulling her into a sense of security. On the evening of February 15th, Maria went to El Avion, a popular bar built from the fuselage of an old plane, where she sipped a mojito and danced with a group of travelers. She left around 11 p.m., declining offers to share a taxi, insisting the walk to her villa was short and safe. It was the last time anyone saw her alive. The next morning, February 16th, Anna woke to a flurry of missed calls from Maria's Airbnb host. Maria hadn't checked out, her belongings still in the villa, her phone unanswered. The host found the front door ajar, a glass of wine spilled on the counter, and Maria's purse missing. Anna, frantic, contacted the Costa Rican police, who launched a search. The villa showed no signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken glass, but something felt wrong. Maria's laptop, left open, displayed a half-written email to a friend, its cursor blinking like a silent cry for help. Her sneakers, usually by the door, were gone, suggesting she'd left in a hurry or been taken. Manuel Antonio, a town unaccustomed to violent crime, was thrown into chaos. Tourists whispered nervously, locals prayed at the Catholic church, and police combed the jungle with dogs and drones. Maria's face appeared on flyers across the province, her smile a haunting contrast to the growing fear. Her family flew from New York, their anguish palpable as they joined the search. Anna, clutching Maria's favorite scarf, spoke to reporters, her voice steady despite her tears. "She's a fighter. She's out there waiting for us to find her." But as days turned to weeks, hope began to fade, replaced by a grim certainty that Maria was gone. The investigation focused on the bar, El Avion, where Maria had spent her final hours. Surveillance cameras captured her leaving alone, walking down a dimly lit path toward her villa. A grainy figure appeared in the footage, trailing her at a distance, his face obscured by a hoodie. Police interviewed bar patrons, narrowing their focus to a local man known to frequent tourist spots, Juan Carlos Vargas, a 27-year-old handyman with a history of petty theft and harassment. Vargas was a drifter, living in a shack on the edge of town, his charm masking a predatory edge. Witnesses recall him at El Avion that night, watching Maria from the bar, his eyes lingering too long. Vargas was no stranger to trouble. His rap sheet included charges for stealing from tourists and a restraining order from a local woman who claimed he'd stalked her. Police searched his shack, finding a chilling trove: Maria's purse, her phone, and a pair of sneakers stained with mud. A knife, hidden under a floorboard, bore traces of blood later matched to Maria's DNA. The evidence was damning, but Vargas was nowhere to be found. He had fled the day after Maria's disappearance, his shack abandoned, his phone disconnected. An international manhunt began, with Costa Rican authorities coordinating with Interpol to track him. The breakthrough came on March 10, 2020, when a tip led police to a remote village in Nicaragua. Vargas, using a false name, was hiding in a fishing community, his arrogance undone by a careless boast at a bar. He was arrested in a dawn raid, his defiance crumbling as he was extradited to Costa Rica. Under interrogation, he spun a web of lies, claiming Maria had invited him to her villa, that her death was an accident during a drunken argument, but the evidence told a different story. Forensic analysis revealed she'd been strangled, her body dumped in a ravine deep in the jungle. The search for her remains was grueling. Monsoon rains had washed away trails, and wildlife scattered what little was left. A fragment of bone, found weeks later, was all that remained of Maria, identified through DNA by her heartbroken family. As the case pieced together a chilling narrative, Vargas, police believed, had targeted Maria at El Avion, drawn to her confidence and solitude. He followed her to the villa, likely forcing his way in when she opened the door, perhaps under the pretense of needing help. The spilled wine, the open laptop, suggested a struggle cut short. Vargas, panicked but calculating, stole her belongings to stage a robbery, then dragged her body into the jungle where he knew the elements would erase his crime. And his flight to Nicaragua was a desperate bid to escape, but his arrogance, bragging to strangers, betrayed him. The trial, held in San Jose in November 2020, was a clash of grief and justice. Costa Rica, a country proud of its low crime rate, was shaken by the brutality of a crime against a tourist. Prosecutors painted Vargas as a predator, a man who saw Maria as prey, her independence a challenge to his twisted sense of power. The knife, the blood, the stolen items, it was an airtight case, bolstered by DNA and witness testimony. Maria's family, led by Anna, filled the courtroom, their silence a powerful rebuke to Vargas's lies. Anna read a victim impact statement, her voice trembling but resolute. Maria was our light, our adventurer. You stole her from us, but you will never take her spirit. Vargas's defense was feeble. He claimed self-defense, alleging Maria had attacked him with the knife, forcing him to restrain her. He insisted the strangulation was accidental, the disposal a panicked mistake. But the jury saw through the deception, the planning, the theft, the flight. It was too deliberate, too cruel. On December 15th, 2020, Juan Carlos Vargas was found guilty of murder and robbery, sentenced to 35 years in prison, one of the harshest penalties in Costa Rican history. The courtroom was silent, the weight of justice tempered by the void of Maria's absence. Manuel Antonio struggled to reclaim its innocence. Tourism, the lifeblood of the town, faltered as travelers questioned its safety. The villa where Maria stayed was sold, its new owners erasing its history with fresh paint and locked gates. El Avión, once a vibrant hub, dimmed its lights, its patrons haunted by the night Maria walked out and never returned. The local community rallied, installing better lighting and security cameras, but the scars remained. Maria's story became a rallying cry, a call for vigilance in a place that had taken its peace for granted. Her family, devastated, found solace in her memory. Anna launched a foundation in Maria's name, funding scholarships for young women to travel and chase their dreams. She'd want us to keep living boldly, Anna said at a memorial, her eyes fixed on the ocean Maria loved. Her parents, broken but resilient, visit Costa Rica each year, scattering flowers in the jungle where she was lost. Maria's siblings carry her mantra, live without limits, in tattoos and whispered promises, their lives shaped by her courage and loss. Questions linger like the mist over Manuel Antonio's cliffs. Was Vargas a lone predator or part of a broader network targeting tourists? Why did local police take so long to suspect him despite his history? Some whisper of corruption, of officials turning a blind eye to petty criminals until tragedy struck. Others point to the vulnerability of solo travelers, the assumption that paradise is safe for all. Amira's story is a warning, a reminder that beauty can hide danger, that trust must be tempered with caution. In Manuel Antonio, the waves still crash, the jungle still sings, but Maria's absence is a void that echoes through the trees, her laughter, her dreams, her fearless heart. They live on in those who loved her, but the darkness of her death is a shadow that never fades. The rain falls softly as it did the night she vanished, washing over the sands where she danced. Paradise, once hers, is a memory now, a fleeting moment stolen by a stranger's hands. As the rain continues to fall, we bid farewell to the shadows we've explored tonight. From the quiet streets of Idaho to the jungles of Costa Rica, these 9 stories have woven a tapestry of human frailty, betrayal, and resilience. Each life lost, each survivor's courage reminds us of the fragile line between light and darkness. Shadows of the past leaves you now with the gentle patter of rain to guide your dream. But the echoes of these tales linger, a whisper in the night, urging us to seek justice, to hold love close, and to never forget those who've been taken. Until we meet again, let the rain carry you into the stillness. Good night.